Welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. We just finished up talking some NBA for the day. We are going to be moving on to some NFL with this next segment and the New York Giants draft decision. There has been a lot of discussion nationally over the past week or so about the potential of the Giants looking to move up in the draft and select a quarterback. They currently sit at number 6 overall. The way that things currently stand pre-combine is that there is pretty much a solidified top 3 in the upcoming draft. That is Caleb Williams, Drake May, and Jaden Daniels in some order. I find it very interesting, the discussion around Caleb Williams, as someone who is a little bit more of a casual college football fan. The way that we're seeing the fatigue about whether or not Caleb Williams should be the number 1 overall pick. I was watching, it was First Take this morning, and Dan Orlovsky said that he would draft Jaden Daniels number 1 overall. I don't feel too strongly one way or another. I think it's very interesting because we've heard about Caleb Williams for over a year now, about how he's going to be the number 1 pick in this draft. I don't know if it's people just almost being bored of running with that, or whether or not there is a real concern with Caleb and that things are shifting in a different direction. We saw Bryce Young be brought up to be this sort of can't-miss prospect, and while the jury is still out on whether or not he's good or bad, it was a very rough rookie season, in large part not due to his own doing. The situation that the Panthers were in was not good, but I don't know if maybe we're seeing a little bit of a mimicked thing here. And Drake May is somebody that I probably personally, from what I have seen, have the most faith in as a prospect, but Jaden Daniels has been a huge riser over the last handful of months. I say all this, JJ McCarthy is also gaining a lot of buzz. He is going to be participating in combine exercises on Saturday. If he comes out and puts on a performance, he could potentially climb his way up into the top 10 or higher. But that being said, the Giants are at number 6, so they are just out of reach of that top tier of quarterback. Now, if somebody else creeps their way up into some top 10 consideration, then the Giants could potentially have an option there without necessarily needing to make any moves themselves. But it would be the 4th quarterback taken off of the board, at least in this instance. And not that that means everything. Ultimately, it comes down to who you view the prospect to be and how you personally grade them. You don't have to worry about necessarily what happens on the board in front of you. But I do think that as it currently stands, the Giants are out of consideration for that tier 1 quarterback, and I think that they would be reaching on anybody they would select at 6. I am not so much a JJ McCarthy person. I understand some of the arguments for him, and again, there's plenty of time until the draft here, so things could absolutely change. But I think that if the Giants are going to make a decision at quarterback, drafting one this year, you would have to trade up. Now, personally, I don't think that that is the best way for them to go about this offseason, where Daniel Jones, I am also not the highest on, but I also think that he put together a very solid year in 2022, helped lead them to the playoffs, helped win a playoff game, and that was with a lot of other factors. Dable coming in as the head coach and putting together a much friendlier offense for him. Saquon Barkley had a very nice season, and a lot of the offensive strategy revolved around him himself, and Daniel Jones was sort of able to be a complementary piece to that. But I also think if you look at the way that the Giants season played out last year, I'm really not sure how many quarterbacks could have succeeded. Now, we didn't even really get a chance to see it with Daniel Jones because he spent a lot of the year injured. That's because their offensive line is an absolute mess. I think that as we've seen, it has really not been working out for them. Evan Neal is not really the option there at tackle for them. Andrew Thomas, when he's healthy, can be a reliable guy for them. They've spent a lot of top 10 capital on offensive linemen in the past handful of years. I still think that it would be something that they should potentially look into. There's a couple guys in this draft, Joe Alt notably from Notre Dame, and then it's Fashanu, I believe is how you pronounce his name, from Penn State, is also touted to be a very good tackle prospect as well. Maybe you can move Neal inside and make him more of a guard. Still potentially see if you can get something from him, but I think that they need a change there. I also think that their receiver room over the past couple of seasons has been very underwhelming. I'd be curious to look back at that 2022 Giants team and see who the leading receiver is. It's probably Isaiah Hodgins. Maybe it's Darius Slayton, but they haven't had a number one receiver since Odell Beckham Jr., and that feels like ages ago that he was the effective version of himself that we saw on the Giants. He's been on now 3 other teams since then. So the Giants definitely need to make a move at receiver, I think, as well. This is an incredible receiver draft. I just don't know if I agree with the idea of putting assets together in order to move up in the draft and select a quarterback where, again, I think that some of the quarterbacks are very polarizing. There's a lot of people that say any one of those 3 can be positive impact players, but they each have concerns of their own, I believe. Caleb Williams, I don't know if I buy into the narratives around it, but a lot of people talk about the fact that he's not a leader. He might not care about actually winning. I think that's maybe a little bit overblown, but there are real people out in the industry who have more connections that have heard stuff like this, and that's sort of the takeaway they're coming away with. Caleb Williams also doesn't have tremendous size himself. Jaden Daniels, a massive improvement, a little bit similar. I mean, he got playing time at Arizona State, but a little bit of a similar career arc as Joe Burrow, not quite as accomplished when it comes to the team success. I don't think that was at the fault of Jaden Daniels himself. The defense for LSU was very bad this season, partially allowing him to let loose a little bit more and inflate his stats some. I still think that anticipation-wise, he really improved this past year, and as a downhill thrower, had some pretty good numbers against man coverage, which is a nice sign for him. I think that he's also very thin, and he has taken a lot of big hits during his college career, and I just feel like you can, point to issues with any of these prospects, which is pretty much what happens every year, but sort of leads me to the idea that unless you feel like you have a can't miss guy, why would you not just spend the pick itself, but move assets in order to get this guy? Now, I say this, and one way or another, because I know that the Texans ended up picking 2nd and 3rd last season when they took CJ Stroud and Will Anderson. So trading for, I forget which pick they were actually slated for. I believe they were slated for 3 and they traded up to 2 to get Stroud. It was pretty much one and the same because they knew they were taking the guy back-to-back, those 2 players, that is, back-to-back. But with Stroud, I feel like, maybe it isn't quite as simple as just that, because he wasn't necessarily a can't-miss guy, but he comes out and has a tremendous rookie season. So I don't know. I think that so often in the NFL, with quarterbacks, it's just a crapshoot. And I think that also, if you look at more recently, the 2021 NFL draft, where 4 out of 5 of those guys that were selected in the front half of the first round are likely going to be playing for different teams this upcoming season, the teams they were drafted to. So much of it is based off of the situation you're put in. If you're the Giants here, I don't see the need to move assets and deprive yourself of those future draft picks in order to take a guy that could hit, could not hit, and there's just so much unknown. The Patriots are a team that I think have actually sort of had a very similar structure to the Giants over the course of the past couple of seasons in a couple ways, with the receivers, with being more so built on the run game offensively, some of those types of factors. The Patriots are a very interesting case because they wouldn't have to move on from anything other than their 3rd overall pick in order to get a quarterback. If they were even 1 pick back, I think that there would be no chance I would be on board for them taking a quarterback. And even now, I still have some hesitations in terms of whether or not they should, because the rest of the team in New England is not up to par. They are not an active contender, and they're sort of on the other end of the Giants, where the Giants would have to move up in order to get a quarterback. The Patriots, if they're going to make any moves, it's them trading down and acquiring more assets to build up the rest of the roster. And I think that that makes more sense for the Patriots than the Giants trading up to get a quarterback. They just paid Daniel Jones last season, and I understand he is not the most popular player in the eyes of Giants fans or a lot of NFL fans as a whole. But I thought that he was fine, again, just fine, but that's all he needed to be in order to lead them to a playoff win. Not just a playoff appearance, but actually stealing a game against a good Vikings team. Wreaked a little bit of fraud if you look at some of the one possession games that they came out on top of 11 out of 11 times in terms of the Vikings here, but that's not the point. I think that the Giants have other needs to address before they go out of their way to go get another quarterback. And if Daniel Jones isn't the guy, so they gave him a contract for, I believe it was 3 years last offseason, but I think they front loaded it, where after this upcoming season, I think they have an out to save themselves a lot of money. Now, I didn't actually look ahead before the thing, but if I come into this here, they do have a potential out after this season. So, I don't know. I feel like you can run it back with Daniel Jones this one last year. At this point, if you think that he is sort of a throwaway at the position, you can just run the course out, and you think he's bad, you'll probably have a good draft pick again next year. And I know that I just yesterday on the show said that I don't love the prospects for next year. We're still so far away that who knows, maybe some guys pop up. I mean, Shedeur Sanders was expected to be in that top 3 with Drake May and with Caleb Williams before, Colorado's season sort of went sideways, and it was pretty much a known thing that he would be coming back to college for another season. So maybe he explodes this upcoming year and we see him come back into the good graces of these NFL analysts and everything. So I don't know. I think that it's not an easy decision to come to here, but I just stand by the fact that I think that the Giants are they're further away than just a quarterback, and making a move where you are putting yourself at a disadvantage going forward to take a swing at one of these guys is very risky in my books, and I would not do it personally. I have a lot of Giants fans in my life. I feel like I gotta survey around a little bit and see if they feel any differently. But that is all I have on this segment. We're going to be taking our final break, and when we come back on the other side, we will be talking some college football and the new proposed format for the years to come in terms of playoffs. So stick with us, and we will be right back.